Holy cow. What what an anticlimactic ending. My goodness. Just like that, huh? Interesting. Okay. Uh, Lunar Dragon Song has been conquered. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Uh, what's the best way to go about this? I guess my overall thoughts, and before I get there, this was a viewer requested game by Nakuri. So, first thing I need to throw out there is thank you, Nakuri, for requesting this game. And for my overall thoughts, I don't think this game is as awful as I thought it would be. I would also say that this game actually does some interesting things that make it very unique and very, I guess, outside the box thinking that is kind of refreshing to come across? Question mark? So let's think about this game for a second, okay? This game makes so many questionable decisions. And arguably those questionable decisions are not fun at all. And like they don't interact very well. They don't like they're just not they don't seem to gel well with each other. Except it still works out as a game. And you know, one has to think to themselves, you don't necessarily have to conform to the same style and the same formula for video games. You know, you can do different things, and those can be successful or unsuccessful things. But you are afforded the ability to do things that other people don't do. And it's very interesting to me that this game approaches itself in that particular method. I kind of find it fascinating that despite this game doing things that I could easily say I would never want in any of my RPGs, I was still able to overcome this game with relative ease. Hardly any to no actual struggle in the matter. Not a single time where I needed to like actually grind to do things. And other than monster chests, but like I was doing them in the same areas, I wasn't going out of my way to do, like excessive grinding. And, like for the most part, one could look at this game and say, this game is absolutely terrible. It just does things that nobody wants in their games. And, I don't necessarily disagree with an outlook like that. But one could also look at this and say, this game did some things that I might not agree with, but it also made the game, like the game was also playable. It could be beaten. It wasn't like super frustrating. It offered a couple of quality of life improvements slash features that made the game better off with those features. Like it's very easy to look at this game and see where it could have gone down the dark path. And I don't think this game goes down the dark path. I think it's somewhere in the middle of, we want to approach a game with a different rule set, and we also want to apply tools so that it's not I guess impossible with that rule set. And to me, that's kind of crazy to play a game that does that. I don't know if that's necessarily the intention, but that's the impression that I get from this game. Is it does something different, and I don't necessarily think that I should berate the implementation of doing that something different, because, you know, who's to say how games should be built and what formula RPGs should conform to. So I guess that's just a long-winded way of saying that I started off not liking this game at all, but as the game progressed and as my understanding of where my limits are and what I could get away with and the things that I was getting away with, I actually began to enjoy the game a lot more than I felt like I had any right to. And by the end of it, I reached a point where I'm surprised that I even beat it, which is, it's a really cool experience for me, because I started off playing the game and I was like, wow, this is what you chose to do, and like, this is what I have to work with. And like, I was looking ahead and seeing the dark path, but the game never sent me down that path. It was just me like assuming that that's where the game would go because of the decisions that I thought the game was going to go down. And so I guess ultimately I definitely consider this game to be a lot better than it gets credit for when it comes to its gameplay. That being said, for the story, was it satisfying? Absolutely freaking not. I did not like the story at all. I think everything involving the story was not to my liking and arguably absolutely atrocious, from the writing to the characters to the way that the story is delivered, to the obnoxious like triggers that you need to do to move on with the story and stuff like that. It wasn't interesting for me. The dialogue wasn't interesting for me. There was nothing about the story that was interesting to me. There's a character on this title screen right now, Rufus, but we met the guy like twice, and the dude dies, and you know, the game pretends that we spent, you know, 25 hours with the sucker. It's crazy. The pacing, you know, surprisingly, I don't think the pacing was absolutely atrocious. You know, I actually think we were relatively on track to do the things that we needed to do. And there were some occasions where we had, at least it felt like we had to go somewhere. And then we had to learn something and then we can go somewhere else, and that's kind of annoying. But other than that, like, okay, it's fine. I auto battle the final boss. All right, so see, here's the thing about me that many people may not know, but I try to say this as much as possible when I'm choosing difficulty options in games. I don't want to be challenged in a game. I don't want to reach a point where I'm fighting the same boss for 10 hours and it's been 25 attempts or something like that, and my only recourse is to back off the boss, go grind, or keep fighting the boss and hope that I win. There's been games in the past where I've spent like 5+ hours on a boss, and it's been one of the most frustrating experiences ever. And I don't want to go through things like that. I think a nice sweet spot is I fight a boss 3 to 5 times, maybe, assuming they're quick battles. Fight them 3 to 5 times. I learn something with every attempt, and I beat the boss within those 3 to 5 times. I think that is a satisfactory spot for me. But those attempts go down the longer the boss battle is. I've had 2-hour boss fights in the past, and those are not fun to go through. So that's just the way it is for me. I'd rather go through a game and breeze through it with no challenge whatsoever than to go through a game where I'm challenged too much, or overly challenged, and it becomes a struggle or frustrating. By the way, I don't have very many thoughts written down for this because I wasn't expecting to beat this game today, and after stopping the stream, I had to work. So, and work today was actually a struggle. I didn't think I was actually going to make it for this afternoon/night stream today. So, but I managed to make it. So, for gameplay mechanics and design, would gameplay elements stand out? This is one of those games where I wish I could have been on the development team for the game, and able to view all aspects and see how it comes together. The reasoning and insight into some of these very unorthodox decisions would be incredibly insightful. I would love to know how the discussion went of, if you're gonna run, you're gonna take damage for it. It's a horrible idea on paper, and I don't think this game leverages or gives you a reason why you take damage for running. But I could see a game out there that makes this a mechanic and builds the game around this type of mechanic. When I first read this in the little tutorial text, one of the first things that came to mind was okay, there's going to be scenarios where they're going to force me to run, and there's going to be scenarios where they're going to force me to walk. And this game doesn't do any of that. So, it makes you wonder, what were their intentions and how did they want it to go? And what were their ideas of why they implemented it this way? That kind of stuff really rings out to me for this game, because I really want to know, what was the idea that they were going for, and why was it implemented this way versus another way? And it's kind of shame that that's not necessarily a possibility for me. That being said, taking damage for running, insane. Toggling between earning experience or random loot that can be turned into a side quest, one side quest at a time for money that doesn't cover expenses, insane. being unable to select the target you want to attack in combat, thus creating scenarios where we don't attack the enemy that poisons, or is low on HP, or focus our damage on the same target. Insane. Items and equipment getting stolen and or broken in combat. Insane. The mana cost for some of these spells. Insane. 40 mana to put 5% regen on allies for the rest of the battle is not worth it. 30 mana to heal all party members for 30 to 40 HP, not worth it. The card mechanic is pretty cool though. I think the cards in this game are potentially overpowered. The cards turn this game from being extremely difficult to, I'll just pop this card real quick and pop some other cards maybe for some dramatic effect, and we'll auto battle for a little bit, and if we run into trouble, we'll throw some heals and stuff like that if we need it. Then again, I appreciate the card system, because without it, I don't think I would have gotten as far as I did. For combat, I don't really have much to say about the combat, other than I'm not that much of a fan. It's one of those things where it's like, not being able to choose who you attack is an interesting idea, and I would love to know more about it. But the absence of being able to choose your own targets, it removes one of those nice pillars in games where you get to make a choice and you get to reap the benefits or suffer the consequences. And it's frustrating to effectively just reap all of the consequences and get no benefit out of it. And it doesn't seem like this game does anything to fill in that gap, to provide you something to make up for the loss of being able to choose your targets. And I think this game would really benefit from being able to choose your own targets. Other than that, I don't think flying enemies really added much of anything to the combat system. I didn't see too many aspects around the combat where I felt like it did anything different. It was a fairly standard turn-based type battle that just, you couldn't choose your own targets. And enemies could steal your stuff and break your stuff. For dungeons, I didn't have any favorite dungeons. I'm pretty sure there's some practical dungeon design issues in at least one of them. The Tower of Curia, or whatever that guy's name is. That was one of them. For cardinal sins, I didn't even go through this. Removing a key party member without sufficient replacement. Home Chick Slice was replaced by Lucia was replaced by whatever the other chick's name was, Flora. But there was a period where we were, by ourselves and things like that. So there's that. No value indicator or tell to determine enemy HP. I'm going to throw this one at this game as well. As far as I could tell, there's no way that you can see enemy HP, and I don't like that. The way that I had to navigate around that was to poison an enemy, and I knew that poison was 5% damage, or HP damage, because of the manual, and that was my gauge, which doesn't count. Interestingly enough, there are no backup party members in this game, which is kind of crazy. You get to dodge that one. Let's see. Didn't have a silent protagonist. Can you believe it? Game is already better than Chrono Trigger. Can you believe it? And I think that's it for Cardinal Sins. Since I mentioned the manual, I would like to mention that I feel like the manual also gave me the ability to be able to play this game. Interestingly enough, like one of the first things that I did when I played this game was press the start button to go into the menu, and instead I was given this like little card thing that told me that when I run, I take damage, and some other helpful things. And like that was relatively helpful. And I learned later on that if you press the start button when you're in a dungeon, you get to learn some of the other core mechanics. But that stuff never occurred to me throughout the game until, I was like accidentally pressing buttons or just trying to accomplish something by pressing buttons. So I kind of feel like the manual was basically required for me to understand this game and actually get through it. And it would be very interesting to see someone go through this game without having access to the manual, to see how they figure out that they're not getting an experience because, they're not in the prayer mode and stuff like that. It would be very, very interesting. For miscellaneous sound and music, there was about one or two tracks where I was, I dug them. At least one of those I'm gonna try to make a beat out of. So definitely gonna add this one to level up this playlist listen and see where it goes from there. For graphics, I thought the visuals were all right. There was someone mentioned this way back, I don't know, maybe like 3 days ago or something like that, that the Beastmen just look like humans, but are like 99% humans or something like that. And I had responded like, oh, but they have like the horns or something, and like that was the 1%. I feel like there could have been more differentiation between like the peoples, and I feel like they could have focused that aspect more in the story and then presented that better in the art. But in general, like the locations and things like that looked pretty nice. The dungeon tile sets and whatnot, they looked pretty solid. I guess it's mostly just the characters. For others, the game worth recommending. Here's an interesting one. Personally, I don't think I can think of anyone that I would recommend this game to. That being said, I don't think this is really a terrible game to recommend. It ultimately doesn't sit very high on a list that people would put this on. It'd probably be towards the very bottom for most people. But this is not one of those games to me. Like, I think recommending Ephemeral Fantasia is like we're going into some questionable territory. I don't think this game lasts long enough and makes you struggle enough to where this would be a poor recommendation. That being said, I don't see myself recommending this to anybody, unless they want to try something that's different type of gameplay, but still the same style of RPG, I guess. Or something like that. But yeah, if the developer is watching, this has been a very interesting experience for me, because I went into this expecting one of the worst games of all time, and it felt like I was playing one of the worst games of all time for the first day or two or three even. But as those days progressively went on, this game suddenly felt like I could come out victorious. And it's not every day that I get to play games where I start off with a very negative mindset, and the game manages to kind of reverse that mindset. And instead of me thinking of the game in a very negative light, it's like, well, I don't think the game is that great, but it brings up a lot of interesting questions that a lot of games out there don't do for me. And like, a lot of games out there do cool things, and they do pose these questions, but I felt like this game just, like, it was the central aspect of it for me. It was the core reason that provided some sort of enjoyment for me. It was trying to think of ideas of like why this would be the case, and then how that morphed into its implementation for this game. I guess to reiterate my overall thoughts and condense them a little bit, I find this game actually very fascinating. That being said, I don't think the game is very enjoyable. I don't necessarily like the game all too much, but I am greatly intrigued by the decisions that it makes, and I think it's short enough and completable that I don't think I regret playing it, which probably something that I never thought I would say when I started playing this on Monday. So yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for my thoughts for today. Thanks for watching, appreciate it. I'll be back Monday, 7 a.m. Pacific, and we'll be playing something. We'll see what something's gonna be. So see ya the next time I see ya. Peace.